All right, good morning, good morning, good morning. Thanks so much for tuning in. This is Church Without Walls, and today we're talking about how to increase your income, what's in your house. And here's the deal, guys. I'm a finance preacher, and what we have come to understand is that the Bible, the great Bible, it says it has a lot to say about money. And so the reason why we have actually created this show is because, for one, there's some people who, hey, they just may not go to church. You know, you might be like me, is like, hey, I'm tired of all of the politics that goes on in the church, but I understand that the church is in me, and wherever two or more gathers together in His name, well, there is He. So right now, this is church. Hey, this is just another form of church. This is a way that you can edify. And what we're going to do, we're just going to go through the Word, and we're going to share our revelations with one another, and see and hope to edify one another with the Word itself. And so this is just a compliment to or a supplement to what you may do throughout your week, throughout your day to day. You may watch this now, or maybe something that you watch later on. And I've also found that although the Bible has a lot to say about money, I haven't found in the churches that I've attended that they talk a lot about money, other than the principle of giving, which is a wealth principle. But I've also come to understand that we have the scripture that says the wealth of the wicked is laid up for the just. And my belief is that if that is true, being that is true coming from the Word, then it would say to me that the just need to become more financially literate. They need to become better stewards so that they can actually manage the wealth that the wicked may have. So we got a couple questions. I'll answer those in a second, Muhammad. So here's the deal. So we're just going to be going through the Word today, the Word of God, the Bible. And if you're not a believer, that's okay, because you may find some things today, some principles that may apply to your life that you can actually take and find out how to increase your income. Why are we talking about how to increase your income? Because I believe that God wants you out of debt. And one of the ways that you can get out of debt is by increasing your income and using that increase to pay off your debts, and then using it more wisely to grow and to build your wealth. So we got Patrick here with us today. How are you today, sir?
Doing phenomenal.
Phenomenal. Absolutely. Thanks so much for joining. So Muhammad, thanks so much for your questions that are coming in on the side. Why do we talk about church? In the Bible, they established a church, which was from Jesus Christ. Am I Muslim? No, I'm not Muslim. I'm a Christian. Thanks so much for your questions. So that's what we're going to talk about today. So, Pat, I always like to start with some blessed statements. And I thought it was no better way to start, but then in Matthew chapter, what was that? I lost it. Matthew chapter 5, verse 3 through 10. Matthew chapter 5, verse 3 through 10. And this is the Sermon on the Mount. This is Jesus talking about who's going to be blessed in this world, or who's going to be blessed as it relates to the Spirit. And so Matthew chapter 5, verse 3 through 10 says, blessed are the poor in spirit. Now, that's interesting. He said poor in spirit. He didn't say, he say just poor in spirit, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Blessed are they who mourn, for they shall be comforted. Blessed are the meek, for they shall inherit the earth. Blessed are those who hunger and thirst for righteousness, not just hunger and thirst for righteousness, for they shall be satisfied. Blessed are the merciful, for they shall obtain mercy. Blessed are the pure of heart, for they shall see God. Blessed are the peacemakers, for they shall be called children of God. Blessed are they who are persecuted for the sake of righteousness, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. So these are the 8 beatitudes, I don't know how to say it, of Jesus, where he was the Sermon on the Mount. And he was talking about, here are the people that are truly blessed, happy, fortunate. Now, first thing was, blessed are the poor in spirit. Now, I thought it was interesting, the words that were used. He didn't say just poor, but poor in spirit. Blessed are those who mourn. Blessed are those who are meek. So we got some characteristics or some attitudes as it relates to our heart condition. That Jesus is saying, when you operate in these 8 areas, as it relates to your relationship with other people here in the world and your spirit itself, you find yourself inheriting the kingdom of God, walking in the kingdom of God, walking in the blessedness of God each and every day of your life. Pat?
Well, and you can kind of look at that first one, blessed is poor in spirit. And I've heard it spoken of slightly a little differently. And there's different slight variations in translations from people to people, but blessed are those who are conscious of their spiritual need. And the reality is we all have a spiritual need. So if you realize that you have that need and that you're poor in that area, that you're conscious that you have a spiritual need, then you're blessed, because once you realize you have that need, then you go out and try to satisfy that need. You go out and search, and blessed are the ones who are actually searching to fulfill their spiritual need.
Absolutely, man. That is a great point. Being conscious of your spiritual need, being conscious of your need for Jesus, being conscious of your need for God to operate in your life. And I think when you're conscious of that, when you truly are conscious of that, and Pat, it's so interesting, because when I say conscious, I think that sometimes we can get into a ritual where we lose our consciousness. In other words, we can go to church, we can sing the songs, we can say the scriptures, but sometimes it becomes so routine that we lose consciousness in doing it. It's almost like I ask people to sometimes, when you go to work, if you go to work each and every day and you work for, let's say, 20 years, you take the same route to work. Can you take that route to work unconsciously? Like you go, you drive, you get there, you wonder, dang, I don't even remember driving. You just unconsciously took the same route that you would normally take. So it really didn't take a whole bunch of thought process for you, a whole bunch of soul searching in order for you to get to work. Well, I think some of us are unconsciously driving the boat to church and operating in that manner, where here's what we do, here's how we do it, here's what we say. And matter of fact, Pat, it's funny, like on Sunday, you get people that have church talk. Monday through Saturday, they don't talk, they don't have church talk. But on Sunday, that's when you hear the church talk. So if you ask somebody Monday through Saturday, how you doing today? I'm doing good. I'm doing fine. You ask them on Sunday how they doing? I'm blessed. Why you not blessed Monday through Saturday?
Well, and it goes down to, are you actually aware of what you're doing?
Yeah.
And are you doing it intentionally? Are you doing it out of habit? Jesus himself spoke of those who are dealing in the traditions of men. They were dealing in tradition. They were dealing out of habit.
Yeah.
They weren't dealing out of intention. They were dealing out of habit.
Yeah. Yeah, so blessed are the poor in spirit. It said, blessed are those who mourn, for they shall be comforted. And so there's a time to weep and a time to laugh. And it even said that, I think it was, what is that verse that said, joy comes in the morning, like you'll be, dang, I can't even remember the verse.
Well, and if you look at
weeping may endure for a night, but joy comes in the morning. So there are times when, when you have someone that may pass away, you have someone, and when you're mourning for the spirit of another person who may not have seen the light, your spirit is vexed, like this person doesn't get it. We really want to help this person come across into the light. We want this person's soul to be saved. Like, are you mourning on a regular basis for the people that don't know Jesus, that haven't experienced the revelation of God? That I believe that's that mourning when you have that, when your spirit is set that way, where you are can't think of the word. You are affected. You are really impacted by those who haven't seen the light. That really does something to your spirit. Your spirit mourns and wants to do something to help these people to see what you have seen, to experience what you have experienced, to grow and to develop and to become all that God has for them to be. Pat?
Well, and if you look at all eight of these come down to the point of you being aware of a situation. All eight of these come down to your own awareness. If you are mourning, you are aware of something you're lacking. It becomes,
or what someone else is lacking. But it becomes a point of awareness. So, all these happy or this, happy or that is like happier people actually are paying attention. Yeah. Yeah. Poor in spirit, mourn. They're meek. They're humble. Hunger and thirst for righteousness, are merciful, pure of heart, peacemakers. Man, look at that. Peacemakers, right? Yeah. We got a lot of people that want to
take an active role.
Yeah.
People doing something actively, not doing something out of habit or just coasting through life.
Yes. Taking an active a role. Go ahead.
Yeah, all these are just someone's actually aware and they have an intention and they're taking some action. Even if the action is they're reviewing it emotionally, they're dealing with something.
Yeah.
They're not just doing things out of tradition. They actually are aware of a need.
Absolutely. And so we have, so these are again, the 8 Beatitudes of Jesus, spoken from the Sermon on the Mount. I really like to start with these blessed statements so that we can really understand what the word is saying about people that walk in this blessedness, not just, and when you walk in it, you don't have to tell people that you're blessed. You don't have to have that conversation to know. You know that you know that you know. And the way that the rest of the world knows, because you operate in these 8 attitudes, the 8 attitudes of the spirit, of the mind, and of the soul, that you are poor in spirit, that you mourn for those, you recognize the situation, that you're meek, you're humble, not much pride going on in your life. And we know that the 2 key destroyers to collaboration is pride and ego. If you're humble, man, you can kind of work with anybody. And you can really work with anybody. You hunger and thirst for righteousness. You want the right stuff to happen. It really bothers you when right things don't happen. I mean, this is your hunger and your thirst. When evil happens, it's a problem with you. It's not just, that's just what happens. That's the way that the world is. No, it bothers you when you see evil happening in this world. You're merciful. You understand that your debts have been forgiven, and so you will forgive others. Man, I see so many people struggle with this one, Pat. I think we all have struggled in a lot of these areas, but it's saying you're merciful. Like, you recognize that you've been forgiven, so you freely forgive other people. Or are you the type of person who doesn't forgive other people and you expect to continue to be forgiven? Are you merciful? Pure of heart, Pat. What are your thoughts on pure of heart? You're pure of heart. Free from, your heart has been refined. It's going through that fire process, right? And now you have a heart of gold, right? What do you think it is, Pat?
Well, and not only that, but all of them. If you look at a lot of things in our society, established environments are more concerned about who is right, about them being right, than they are about what is right.
Yeah.
And whether it's the public school system or a police department, stuff like that, they are so concerned about image and that they look they're right even when they're not necessarily, instead of what was right. And to me, the pure of heart thing is you're looking at what is right, not necessarily who is right. It doesn't matter who it is. What matters is what is right.
Absolutely. And so that was pure of heart and the peacemakers, and then that you're persecuted for the sake of righteousness. That you may go through something when you're fighting for what's right, guys. You're gonna go through something. There's a battle for those who are fighting for what's right, who are trying their best to do the right thing. Sometimes there's a battle, and sometimes you'll be mocked, you'll be persecuted. You may spend some time in jail. Here's the interesting thing about jail, Pat. When I look at history, although we shun jail, there's a lot of people in history who have spent time in jail trying to do what is in their heart of hearts they feel is right. Right? When I look at Muhammad Ali, spent time in jail. Right? Malcolm X, Martin Luther King. And of course, these are people that I'm just, Mahatma Gandhi. These are people that spent time in jail fighting for what's right. And we honor those people, right? They were willing to spend the time in jail, I wonder sometimes, and be in the presence of, quote unquote, all of these evil people, right? I mean, because sometimes when you think of jail, you think of all the people that have done wrong, but there's a lot of people who are in jail because they've done right. And I would say, go ahead.
No, well, even scripturally, if you go all the way back to Paul.
Yeah.
I mean, some of the books of the Bible were written while he was sitting in a jail cell.
Yeah. So that goes to show, guys, that, everybody that's in jail isn't necessarily the reason why they're in jail because of something evil or something wrong or something that they've done. It can be something that they stood up for. And they truly believe that, hey, I'm standing up for what's right. Do what you got to do on this world, in this outside world, but I'm going to do what I know is right. And hopefully we all take a stand to do what's right, man. Because if the jail cell is filled with people that are doing what's right, man, that whole atmosphere in the jail is going to change. You're going to have some people coming out owning businesses and ruling the world. You have your own little church right there. So those are the beatitudes of Jesus. That's the Sermon on the Mount, the blessed statements that came from the mouth of Jesus himself. And so we want to make sure that we're operating in these things. We want to study this stuff out and be like, okay, when I look at my life, when I look at how I'm operating, how I'm moving on a day-to-day basis, am I walking this out? Am I walking with being poor in spirit? Am I mourning for those that for the situations I understand from my life, or the situations that I come in contact with that I know could be better, that I know I can help or I can make a difference? Am I meek? Am I humble? Am I able to work with just about anybody? Do I hunger and thirst for righteousness? Am I willing to do what's right no matter what? Am I merciful? Am I pure of heart? Do I have a heart of gold? Am I a peacemaker, or am I a troublemaker? It's funny, Pat. You got the kids that you might call troublemakers every now and then, and you put that on them. The parents or the community or whatever, they put that tag on them. They don't call them peacemakers. Hey, you're a little peacemaker. No, they call them troublemakers, and then they wonder why some of them grow up to be troublemakers. Isn't this something?
we program them.
Yeah.
Power
of life or death is in the tongue, huh? We just cast that out on our little kids, and then we wonder, why they end up in some of the situations that they find themselves.
Yeah, and we start that silliness. We start that silliness when they're very young. We talk about the terrible twos. Why do their twos have to be terrible? Why can't they be tremendous twos?
Yeah.
They're learning and they're exploring. Why are they the terrible twos? Why do we say, oh, the middle child, you're going to have problems with that one?
Yeah. Wow.
Well, and then not expect to have problems with that one. If we tell them, you're going to be a problem child, they want to help. They want to do their part. They want to follow instructions. If we give them those instructions, whose fault is it?
Whose fault is it, man? How are we raising our kids, man? Are we raising them to be peacemakers? Or are we tagging them at an early age and telling them what they're going to be and do? And as that is, this stuff sticks with them, Pat.
Oh yeah.
And so it's interesting, even because of the Bible, like their names meant something.
Yes.
And they ended up, those names that they called their children, especially they called them a name, they gave them a name, and their name had a meaning behind it. And their children end up walking out the name in which they were given. Just by the name itself had a meaning. I wonder how much thought we put into the names that we give our children.
Well, not only the names we give them, but the names we call them.
Yeah.
I mean, how many times have you been into a public environment and you hear a parent yell at a child, "Hey, stupid."
Yeah.
Well, what are you impressing on that child? And what are you teaching that child when his nickname, even though it's not written, his nickname is a negative adjective, and he hears that his entire life.
Yeah.
And nowadays we have all these books of kids' names to pick from and all that.
Yeah.
But before, like you said, they used to actually try to pick a name that would point their life in a direction.
Yeah, absolutely.
And then their name meant something. I mean, there's another teaching of the I am philosophies. Where when you say I am, you are actually calling on the name of God to make that so. Because when Moses came down from the mountain, he asked, who do I tell them who sent me? He says, I am. Tell them I am have sent you. I am that I am.
Yeah, absolutely.
And, so as we start telling our children and calling them these things, or saying these nasty things to them, or telling them it's a terrible twos, or you're the middle child and that's why you're a problem child, and they want to oblige and help us along and do what we ask them to do, and they become the terrible twos. We impress that upon them, then they accept it. It's really kind of sad.
Oh, guys, we are. Thanks so much for joining everyone that's starting to join and come a part of this conversation. This is a Church Without Walls. Feel free to jump into a seat. It's not a me show; it's a we show. And we're just going through the Bible, talking about some scriptures. Just went through Matthew chapter 5, verses 3 through 10, the Sermon on the Mount, the Beatitudes, what Jesus had to say about really being blessed. And we're saying, hey, are we really operating or walking in this blessedness that Jesus said from his Bible? Now, there may be some people here that don't read the Bible, but we're going to be going through some things today that you can actually tap into some principles, and hopefully you can start to see, man, make this thing true if you don't believe in it yourself. And so we really just want to have church here today. It's where two or more gathered together. There he is in our name, and this is really what you call a church at the end of the day. Matt, how are you, sir?
I am good. How are you?
Doing well. Thanks so much for joining.
Oh, no problem. Good to be here. I actually just joined Blab today. I've been looking for a good conversation. I've been having a hard time finding something to talk about. I was trying to, play some music for people or something, but it's kind of early here. I'm in Michigan. It's 8 a.m, so I'm down for some religion talk.
That's cool. Well, we're going to talk about principle talk, but thanks so much for joining me. It is kind of hard sometimes to find something of substance to talk about on Blab, so you got to be very, very keen with your eyes. So we're going to be actually talking about today what's in your house and how to actually increase your income. So we'll go right on over there and talk about this because, again, the Bible has a lot to say about money, whether you know it or not. And unfortunately, I found that we don't talk about money enough in our settings of church, especially where I've been. I don't know where everybody else has been. So what we want to do is start to talk about the things that seem to be very, very important to the writer of the Bible or to God himself. And one of those things is money, how you manage it, what you do with it. And I truly believe that God wants you to be out of debt. So we'll go over to 2 Kings chapter 4, verse 1 through 7. 2 Kings chapter 4, verse 1 through 7. What we're going to be talking about here today, guys, is how this woman got out of debt. This woman was severely in debt. And we're going to talk about things that she did to actually get out of debt. And we'll talk about a few different components to this process of her actually getting out of debt and how she used God's word or God's chosen messenger, follow his instructions and find out getting herself out of debt. So many of you guys hopefully are familiar with this story. This is the woman with the oil that continued to flow. So let's go ahead and read that scripture, and then we'll talk about what it means to us, some points that we got away from this particular story. So it says, a certain woman of the wives of the sons of the prophets cried out to Elisha. Elisha was the prophet sent from God, saying, your servant, my husband, is dead. And you know that your servant feared the Lord, as the creditor is coming to take my 2 sons to be his slave. So first, think about this. This lady is in a situation where her sons are about to be repoed, so to speak. She is so knee deep in debt that now they're coming to collect, and because she doesn't have money, they're coming to actually take some of her resources, which in this particular case is going to be her son. So things worked a little bit different way back in the day. They can come and get your family and put them to work and make them slaves. And this is how go ahead, Matt.
I was just saying, yeah, I follow you. Yep.
All right. So Elisha said to her, what shall I do for you? Tell me what do you have in your house? She said, well, your maidservant has nothing in the house but a jar of oil. So Elisha asked her, how can I help you? And tell me, what do you have in your house? And she said, I have nothing but a jar of oil. Then he said to her, go borrow vessels from everywhere, from all your neighbors, empty vessels, and do not gather just a few. And he told her, hey, go get as many vessels as you can get a whole bunch of them. And when you have come in, you shall shut the door behind you and your sons, and then pour it into all those vessels and set aside the full ones. So she went from him and shut the door behind her and her sons, who brought the vessels to her, and she poured it out. Now it had came to pass that the vessels were full, that when the vessels were full, that she said to her sons, bring me another vessel. And he said to her, there is not another vessel, so the oil ceased. Where am I at? So the oil ceased. Then she came and told the man of God, and he said, go sell the oil and pay your debt, and you and your sons shall live on the rest. So basically, to sum this story up, he came, told her, go get some jars, some empty vessels, go borrow from all your neighbors, all your friends, get as many as you can. And they went and got as many as they could. And when they couldn't get no more, that's when the oil ceased. That's when they stopped being able to fill jars. They were able to sell the jars that they had, pay off their debts, and they had enough of this resource, of this wealth, to live off the rest. And so let's talk about a few things that may have stuck out to you as it relates to this particular story, and how can we use this story to help us to get out of debt? How can we use this story to help us to increase our income? Matt, if you got anything real quick.
Sure. I follow what you're saying here. As far as back in those days, the currency wasn't what it is today, as far as our paper dollars or our credit, So as far as it's sad back then that, if you're in debt to a creditor or whatever you want to call it, that the only way to pay off your debt is to give up your only 2 sons, to be slaves for God knows how long, right?
Yeah.
It's sad, but I think applying that to today's standards, I think the message that Elijah or, God is trying to say is do whatever you can, use whatever resource is necessary to ensure that your family is safe and happy. And I don't know. I mean, today's world is messed up because our currency is simply a piece of paper or your bank account. And, if you wanted to apply that to today, you'd kind of have to say, if you're in debt, if you're facing, what's the word?
Bankruptcy,
yeah, that kind of thing. Like you do whatever is necessary. And it's sad that some people resort to violence or selling drugs, which I don't think is what God would want. But I think the lesson is do whatever you can in a moral way to survive,
To survive. So we find here, Matt, you said to survive. We find in this story, not only did she survive, but she started to thrive.
Right.
After she started to listen to the man sent from God. So we can say listen to God. We can say listen to godly counsel. We can say she listened to a coach. Nowadays we have life coaches, finance coaches. I wonder and of course I'm talking to anybody that may be in debt who might listen to this at some point in time. If you find yourself in debt right now, who are you listening to get out of debt? Matter of fact, who are you going? Are you even going somewhere to get some counsel? Because here's the deal. The way that you thought has brought you to the place that you are. So if you find yourself in debt, it has everything to do with how you've been thinking and how you've been operating up until this point. So maybe you can't get out of debt by yourself. You may think you're your own superhero and you're Superman, but maybe you need some help. You need to talk to someone that can give you some wise counsel and can point you in the direction you need to go. Here's the interesting thing, Pat and Matt. He had the oil the whole time. It's not like he manifested some oil and said, hey, we're going to go and generate some oil. And then she had the oil in her house the whole time. But she didn't know what to do with the oil or how to actually monetize the oil, so to speak. We'll say that in 2016. She didn't know how to monetize the oil in order to make it become a resource of income that now she's living off of for life. She went from being in debt, heavily in debt, to the point where her children were about to become slaves, to being wealthy, all from a matter of tapping into the resource that was already in her house. Pat.
Well, I think there's a number of principles we need to take in consideration here, because like I said, a lot of things in scriptures are spoken of in principle and need to be used as a principle. So it starts at the very beginning as, I think, a warning. Be careful about getting in that situation, because you do inflict that upon your children. And even though we don't inflict it upon our children the same way nowadays, the reality is we inflict that attitude or that pattern of being in debt on our children by being in it ourselves our entire life while they're with us. So it's important that we break that pattern. And I think the other part of the other principle we need to look at is she was told to, what do you have? You start with where you are, and whatever you have, find a way to use that. You will be blessed by what you currently have. Do not begrudge what you have. In other words, if you are a farmer, don't curse the dirt that you need to grow the crop. Ask that gets blessed. Whatever you have, ask that what you have gets blessed.
And that you actually use what you have.
Yeah,
right?
use what you have.
So you mentioned, let's go back to your first point of establishing these patterns that we may pass on to our children. So Matt, I'll ask you this. We talk a lot about, in my community, Black community, we talk a lot about breaking generational curses. And the question that we send out to the masses is, are you going to pass down bills or benefits? And so when we accrue this debt, our children may not be slaves literally. Physically, but we may pass down the debts that we have to our children. Now they become financially enslaved, very similar to what we see here. So they're working to pay off our debts that we've accrued, and maybe there are debts that we accrue from our parents, and it just continues to go down the pipe. Matt, what are your thoughts? About that?
Yeah, it's kind of that's just as far as the African American community, I feel like a lot of injustice was done in America. That's where I am. So it's like it's hard for the generations to pass down the correct values, maybe is the way I would say it, to get out of that debt. And then especially with the way that the world is, with drugs and whatnot, and the ways to make money quick, not necessarily the right ways to make money. But I think what Elijah was saying is, look around you, ask for help, and God will help. He will show you. You have the oil. You have the means if you ask.
You have the means if you ask. Absolutely, Pat, man. So this whole passing down debt or enslaving your children. It's interesting that we're still dealing and talking about this 2,000 years later, right? Same principle of the creditors coming to take your children to be slaves, and it's not that way, but the creditors will enslave your children if you don't pay your bills.
Well, and if you don't teach them, you see, now the creditors go into the colleges and get college kids hooked on credit card debt.
Yeah.
Because we haven't really taught our children the dangers of that. We've taught them the pattern of using credit instead of teaching them the pattern of being debt-free.
Yeah.
And so now when they go to college, they're all exposed to all these credit card offers.
Yeah.
Do they really understand what they're getting into?
I think a lot of the problem with the crediting system and what you're talking about as far as the colleges offering, credit cards to children, a lot of it falls on responsibility falls on the parents to, and also the educational system to teach the kids that this is not the right way to do it. Despite they're going to come to you, they're going to offer you the credit card. But like for me personally, I was smart enough to realize, why would I take a credit card if I can't pay it off? And there's a lot of people out there who aren't, I'm not calling them savvy. Stupid, but savvy enough to realize, okay, if I take this credit card, I can buy a TV right now, and I'm gonna watch TV. But at the end of the day, when that bill comes at the end of the month, and it's like, I have $100 in my bank account. What do I do now? And it hits them. There's nothing they can do.
You get a credit card with no job. That's interesting. So I think let's kind of break this down, man. This is a great story, man. One, it talks about someone getting out of debt and doing it. I like to say getting out of debt God's way, right? So the first thing that we notice here is that she cried out, right? That's the very first thing I see. She cried out. So she literally was to the point where she said, I need help. And I'm going to, it's not just I'm praying, like she cried out. She was desperate for help. She was desperate to get out of this situation. And we often say, Pat, that people move either by inspiration or by desperation. We want to hopefully help people not get to the point of desperation. But sometimes that's needed. Sometimes you gotta have the intensity of a gazelle if you really want to get out of debt. Like that's gotta be a serious desire of yours to say, you know what? No matter what, I'm going to be debt free. And so this lady was crying out because of this situation. She was crying out to God saying, I need help. And so I wonder if those that might watch this at any point in time, you find yourself in debt. Are you crying out for help? Or are you walking in this other spirit that says, you know what? I'm too proud. I got myself in this mess. I can get myself out. I don't need any help. And you continue to find yourself month after month, year after year, day after day, still dealing with this mountain of debt that's on your shoulders. And I found, and I don't know about anybody else, that most of the stress that happens in people's life come from a financial stress. Like if you didn't have any other issues to deal with, if you didn't have to deal with money, if you didn't have any other money issues in your life, how much more peaceful would your life be? Are you willing to cry out for help?
I think
that you need. Go ahead, Matt.
I think the word you're using, cry, is very, very, very relevant because as far as asking God for help, a lot of people these days. I was raised as a Methodist. I grew up in going to youth camps and doing helping paint houses, and I don't know the Bible as well as some other people, but I think I have a good relationship with God. But the word cry, like I think it has more value than simply praying. Like when you actually feel pain, that is that deep pain that I'm in debt and I don't know what to do. Like in order for God to hear you, you have to break down and sometimes actually cry, and then God will hear you.
Yeah, a contrite heart, absolutely, Pat.
Well, yeah, I think when it actually becomes real, when it becomes an emotion and not just a tradition. Many people pray out of habit and tradition. And that is that really you praying?
Is that right? Really, yeah, or is that what is your spirit really saying, not necessarily your flesh? What is your spirit really saying and not necessarily your flesh? So again, guys, for those that just joined us, we're talking about, this is Church Without Walls. We're talking about what's in your house, how to increase your income. And we're going through the story of Elisha and the widow with oil, 2 Kings chapter 4, verse 1 through 7. We just talked about how she started the scripture was started with her crying out for help, crying out to God for help. And so if you find yourself knee deep in debt, when is the last time you cried out? Now, Matt, you said, I want you to really tell us, when you hear the word cry out, what does that really mean to you? You said there's some pain involved. There's some emotion.
It's like a hurt on the heart when you realize that I can't do anything. I don't know what to do. And like, I've cried my whole life from like when I'm struggling, and it's hard because sometimes like you'll get people who tell you, oh man, you got to man up. Why are you crying? I just got out of jail and I cried in jail because I was so desperate. And I got, these people who are in gangs looking at me laughing and saying, you're a pansy, blah, blah, blah. It's like, you can judge me all you want, but I'm in pain. I don't care what you think about me. Like if I feel the pain, then like that, I'm going to cry. I'm going to cry when I realize I have almost no way out.
Yeah, absolutely, man. So as she cried out to Elisha, now let's talk about Elisha a little bit, because I believe it's significant what he represents. And when I was trying to think about what he represents, obviously he's a prophet sent from God. Some would say that he's the man of God. He's the representative of God on the earth. But even in today's world, guys, you can get godly counsel from a lot of different people. God can send you a messenger from anywhere. Now, and I'm thinking of this, like, did this woman know who Elisha was when he showed up? Or, was he famous at this? Not famous, but was he known in this area? And she's like, okay, I got to talk to the man of God. Or was Elisha just someone that kind of came across her path and she recognized something in him or on him or something like that? She said, at least I can ask this guy for help. And so I think I want to talk about this because not only was Elisha a man of God or a prophet of God sent as a representative of God, but I think a lot of times in our life, people are sent to give us a message. And the question is, will we really listen? Right? Will we really pay attention? Will we give people the opportunity to speak into our life? Or is it that we say, hey, the pastor is the only one that can talk into my life, but yet the pastor's not around you 7 days a week. And there may be other people in your sphere of influence that if you just allow them the opportunity to speak into your life, they can help you to get out of some of the situations that you may find yourself in. At this point in time, Elisha to me was a coach. He was what we would call a life coach or a finance coach at this point in time, an accountability partner, someone that could look at her situation outside of herself and give some advice that may be a benefit for her to follow. What are you guys' take on Elisha and his from his standpoint, who he was, and maybe how we can see him in today's term as it relates to the story?
Well, as far we don't know from what I remember in Scripture, and I try to read through it again. There's no note whether or not she actually had a intimate knowledge of who Elijah was, but she actually did cry out or did ask for help. So she, at that point, she may have been asking anybody for help. I mean, we don't know. But Elijah actually did respond. And the point is that once she heard the response, she took the action. When she was basically said, "What should I do?" And it's like, "What do you have to do with?" Well, this is, I only have this, only have this. Well, then let's use that. Take that, subdivide it into smaller sections, and go and sell it. Take what you have and use it. And she followed. She listened. She was given a plan, and she followed the plan, and she found a way out. And it's not that she found it all by herself. She asked, she was recognized the need. She asked for help and direction. She didn't ask somebody else to do it for her. What should I do? What do I need to do? She asked what I needed to do. And she was said, well, do this. And then she took the effort. She instructed her sons to go collect the jars. She followed the instructions. She took action.
Man, you just made some great points, Pat, that she took ownership and then she took action. She cried out for help. She asked. She took ownership for saying, "Hey, I've got something that I can do in this situation." Right? How many of us notice? How many of us have seen like, okay, I'm not going to take any ownership, but I'm just going to pray to God and hope God fixes it. And God may be saying, "Well, hey, we're going to work together to fix this. I need you to have some part in that. Faith without works is dead. So you need to have some input in this whole process of fixing this mess that you have put yourself in." And so you said she took ownership. So that's the question, guys. When we find ourselves in whatever situation, obviously we're talking about money, but this is a principle that applies to a lot of different areas of life. We talk about money because it's tangible, it's easy to count. But the principle is this: when you find yourself in these situations that you are desperate to get out of, okay, let's understand, she is desperate to get out. They're about to come get her children. Now, I don't have any kids, but I imagine what that feels like when your children are about to be taken away. Imagine DFACS coming to get your children. Imagine the creditors getting ready to put all of this debt on your children. Imagine your children Social Security numbers being filled with $50,000 worth of debt before they even got to college. Your creditors are coming to get your children. So she cried out for desperation, saying, "I need help, and what can I do about it?" That's important. Not only did she recognize the need, but she said, "What can I do about this mess that I find myself in?" Matt.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, I think another important point to make as far as praying and asking for help to God is there's a lot of different religions out there. Like you got Hindu, Islam, all this stuff, and varying viewpoints on who God is or what God is. But I've always thought, I've looked into all kinds of different religions, and I see myself as more of a spiritual person. I don't try to identify as I am a Methodist or whatever. It's like if you ask for help from your heart, you ask for that help, and you admit that I don't know what to do, and then but you still have to have, like you were saying, Mr. Jefferson, that you have to have that spirit inside you that says, I know I need help, but I also know I need to do things. I need to think of ideas and ways and find ways that if some prophet doesn't come to my door and help me, I need to at least look around my life and try to find a way out,
So let me ask you guys this question, Matt. Matt, this goes to you first. I have found whenever I've asked for help that a prophet has always been sent. In other words, when I say a prophet, a messenger, someone that can actually speak, I can talk to, that can give me some sound counsel or can help me filter out my thoughts. So have you found whenever you mentioned sometimes you cried out for help that you found a friend, even if it's not, we're not going to say necessarily a prophet, that you found a friend or found someone that could speak into your life, give you some hope, give you some inspiration, give you some direction?
Not always, no.
Okay.
No, not always. And that's just part of life, I think.
Okay. Hey, Christian Hillbilly, how are you?
I'm doing better than I deserve. Gentlemen, how we all doing on this fine and lovely day that the Lord has made? Let us rejoice and be glad in it. Yeehaw!
That's what I'm talking about, man. So you got any thoughts?
Looking at the scripture y'all talking about, and it, I really think in order to get the whole idea of what's going on in this poor woman's life, you got to look at the very last of 2 Kings chapter 3, where the whole world is in turmoil. People are dying right and left, and she's seeing this turmoil. And now a certain woman of the wives of the sons of the prophets cried out. Well, that woman was known to be the wife of Obadiah. So she's not somebody that's just nobody. She's somebody in this community, and now she's having to reach out and try and find hope. And I think this is what a lot of people do. They actually just come into their shell and they don't reach out, or they don't cry out to God, and then God can't put anything into hands that are clasped shut. If you hold out what you have, God will pour in more than you can hold.
Yeah.
Well, I also think it's interesting that, she didn't come upon this situation necessarily because of something she did negatively, but, it says her husband died. She lost her husband, which, when a family loses the main breadwinner, a lot of times they do go into financial stress. And so she's in financial stress, and she has gotten herself into a situation. Some of it may have been what her husband had started previously, and she inherited some of it. Some of it may have been from him dying. But it's interesting that not only did she ask for help, but once she had fulfilled the first step, when Elijah said, go get the jars and fill them, then when that was done, then she went back and she said, now I've done that. Now what? And then he said, go sell the oil and pay your debts. She had to go back and listen to the coach the second time. She had to take the first step, and then now what do I do? I done that. Now what?
Man, I'm glad
she had to come back and ask.
Yeah, I'm glad you're bringing that up because you just mentioned 2 points. One is she did the first step and came back. How many of you guys have had some people come to you for advice? You give them some advice and they don't go do anything with it. Then you find a couple people who might come to you for advice. You tell them, hey, go do this, and then they be like, they go do it. Like right then, like it's like 5 hours later, like I finished. What do you want me to do? Typically, this is kids, but I think we have some adults that have a kid heart that will go act immediately, do whatever it is that if they feel like it's wise counsel, go get it done and come back to you and be like, okay, I finished that. What's next? You'll typically find this in your mentees. You'll find this in those people that are considered you might be an apprentice to, or they're apprentices. I don't know how that relationship works, but they're job shadowing you or something like that. And maybe you got 5 people that are job shadowing you. You got one person that'll actually listen to you, go do what you said, go do what you advised, and come back to you and be like, I finished that. What's next? The other 4 people are like, why do we need to do that? No, notice she didn't ask why. She didn't say, Elisha, why do I need to go get jars? Why, it's only this much oil. Why do I need to go get jars? She didn't ask why. She just went and did.
Yeah, isn't that the faith that we have to have? We have to have the faith that what we're being known, especially if you've touched somebody that is reaching out to you and they are in touch with what God has for you, then you can do these things without having to question every little thing. I'm not saying be totally foolish, but when you're talking about something like this, where she knew that Elisha was a man of God, and so she had her faith in what was that word that she called? It wasn't Joshua, Adonai. She had her faith in Adonai. And again, that's another term of endearment for God. And so she put her trust in God through this holy man.
So let me ask you this, everybody. So let's talk about this, having this faith in this man, this man that she recognized came from God. But let's talk about it in terms of today, right? What are some characteristics that we see in people, men or women, that causes us to have the faith and trust in their words that they may speak upon us, or the directions they may give us, right? Because there are times where we're going to come across people, and we may not necessarily consider them to be prophets or whatever, but there's something about them that we trust enough to follow their direction without asking why. What are some of the characteristics in these people that we may see? Because she probably sees these same characteristics in Elisha that cause her to act upon the advice without asking why. And she found that advice to be substantial. So, Matt, what are some characteristics that you see in people that you trust, that you're like, hey, you know what? This person said this, and you know what? I'm just going to go do it because I trust their wisdom.
Yeah, I think the main two traits of a person like that would be honesty and compassion.
Honesty and compassion. Good one. Good one. What about you, Mr. Christian Hillbilly?
Well, I think since this man was known in the community as a man of God, it wasn't just by his word, but it was by his deed, and that he followed the word of God, followed the deeds he should have done by God's actions. And those are easily borne out in a community, especially the smaller communities. They can see when you do something that doesn't match what you say. If a person goes out and says, you know what, you need to save and you need to be frugal, and then you see them going out and blowing every penny they have and going into bankruptcy, you're not going to be likely to follow that person.
So you want to say, so you're saying consistency and integrity? Would that be?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Your words have to match your deeds. I was reading something earlier this morning about George Washington.
Whoa. Let me, okay. You got to repeat that. Your words.
Your words have to match your deeds.
Woo, there we go.
And
okay, go ahead.
I was reading something this morning on some history, and it was talking about George Washington, and George Washington's favorite saying was deeds instead of words.
Well, he also owned slaves.
Profound.
What'd you say, Matt?
I said George Washington also owned slaves.
Well, yes, he did. But you know what? He was also one of the first ones to start putting those slaves as rather than slaves as employees, because at that time, if he had turned them loose, they would have been put in a much more harmful situation. You'll find that that's true of a lot of the founding fathers. They were already in a
harmful situation by being a slave.
Well, once again, he couldn't change everything in his community in one whack. Not even when he became president. Not even when they wanted him to be in presidential, be the president for on and on and on. But he was trying to make the community move towards the fact that what God's word says is we are all equal. There is nobody higher than the other. The ground at the cross is level.
All right, so here's the deal, guys. We might have to have a political talk at some point in time. We're not going to talk about that right now because we're going to go all off topic. So, hey,
go ahead. Hey, I have a tendency to do that. You got to watch me.
No, here's the deal, guys. Like, I think you guys are bringing us some valid points, but I want to save this conversation for another time because we can talk about this whole slave thing because, a lot of people in the Bible had slaves, but let's not go there today. We want to stay on topic because typically this show goes all over the place sometimes. So let's try to stay on top. But I appreciate you bringing that up, and that's going to be an integral part of this show that people are going to listen to. They're going to think about it. Maybe they're going to do their own research and start to kind of figure out some things. So go ahead, Pat.
Well, so the original question was, when you look at someone else, whether or not to follow their advice.
Yeah.
And be honest with you, I think some of that, it doesn't matter who God sends as the messenger. Even in some cases, it may not be a person that you would follow, but that doesn't mean the advice is wrong. So you have to judge the advice based upon what your prayer was or what your request was, and whether it's in line with the way God would view what you need to do. So if the advice comes from somebody that may not necessarily be someone that you would follow as a person, the question is the advice still from God. And the way you know if the advice is still from God is whether or not that advice would follow what you know of what God would direct you to do. So, like, there's a common thing that he did use a donkey. There's actually scripture where the only prophetess in the Bible that has no hope of the resurrection was the donkey, because that spoke. So if God needs to, he can make rocks talk. So where we hear that is less important as what we hear, and can we discern the wisdom of it? So, and can we discern the wisdom of it based upon what we have absorbed and from our knowledge of what we've learned? So, you say people have had all these different backgrounds and what Christian faith they were in. But the reality is, like we've had discussions before, how many have actually read the book cover to cover? How many have absorbed that information so they can discern for themselves the message? And the message is more important than the deliverer of the message.
The message is more important than the messenger. And so, I mean, if I was getting a message from, this vitally important person, I don't care who the courier is. I care who the message is from and what the message is. Hey, so Matt, he just said the rocks can talk or donkeys can talk. So when you weren't able to find that friend, I wonder what spoke to you, because for me, I'm gonna tell you, sometimes when I couldn't find that friend or that person speaking to my life, I would go outside, I would look up in the sky, and the sky would talk to me.
For me, a lot of the times in my life, it's been music.
Music, okay, yeah, that's a good one. What about you, Mr. Hillbilly? When you couldn't find that friend or that man of God or that person speaking to your life, what are some things maybe from nature that have spoken to you?
I like to get out in the woods, me being a hillbilly kind of person. I like to get out in the woods and just see God's creation. One of the things I am so passionate about is preaching about Genesis and how God created according to their kinds. And when you get out in the woods and you are in basically the cathedral of God, I mean, it doesn't get any better than that.
What about you, Pat?
Well, like I said, a lot of times, because everyone has a way to go back into nature or into the gifts that God puts out. Music was a gift from God also. But, there have been times in my life where I literally just gotten on a motorcycle and don't remember how I got to where I went, but I just, needed to go and be out in the atmosphere and just go down the road and go out in the country. And many times I'd end up at the river, and I don't know why I ended up at the river. But, just being, just taking the time and being out there.
Fantastic, man. So the next point I think I want to bring up, guys, we're going through, this is Church Without Walls, in case you guys are wondering. This is just a place. This is church. I mean, two or more gathered together in his name, there you have it. So there's no walls here. We can just share freely some things that we're getting from the Word of God, and just going through 2 Kings chapter 4, verses 1 through 7. So here's the deal. Okay, cool, Matt. The next point I want to make, and it really speaks a lot, because as a finance coach, as a certified financial educator, here's what I help people with: how to increase your income. So here's what this lady did, and here's the question that you got to ask yourself. The question that the man of God asked her was, what's in your house? What is in your house? So as you think about wanting to increase your income, maybe you want to pay off debt, maybe you want to save up for something that you got going on, maybe you want to start a business, whatever it is that you want to do with this money, and hopefully it's something good. The question is, what's in your house? Pat said it earlier, start from where you are. And so when I was able to start my business, I asked myself, what was in my house? Now, this house has changed over time, but it's still a house itself. It could be your physical house, or it could be your physical house. So I would say to you, check what's up here. I consider this to be a gold mine. I've been able to transfer my ideas into income. And I tell people all the time, you don't have an income problem, you have an idea problem. What Elisha did was he gave her an idea, and she capitalized on the idea. So ask yourself right now, if you're looking for ways to generate more income. I know Rob is here. He's working on ways to generate more income. Probably all the people that are in here today, you're working on ways to generate more income. What is in your house? Pat.
Well, and like I said, that you're reading there, and the prophet said, Tell me what you have in your house. And that's what you have to ask yourself. What do I have that could be of value to others? Because you solve problems, physical, financial problems in this world by being of service to others. And you can only be of service with others with the gifts you have. And we all have gifts. Some of them are financial, physical, and some of them are emotional, and some of them are spiritual. And, some people have a gift of music, and people have different gifts. So whatever your gift is, what do you have so you can be of service to others? Because as you serve others and solve their problems, as you give on to others, so shall it be given unto you.
Mr. Hillbilly.
Well, to tell you the truth, I had been in the mortgage business, and when I'd retired from that, the business had tanked. And so I did look around in my house, and my wife was the one who had the creative side. So she began to do card making, greeting card making, scrapbooking, papering. It was amazing what she was doing. Basically, I was helping her do that a little bit, but then she got sick. And so we had to rethink our ideas. And then now I've got a little bit of, I like to do woodworking and stuff like that. I build websites. I do a little bit of everything. But I think the main thing that I do is I look for whatever the person particularly needs. I've got one person, I built a website for a mortgage place. I'm helping another person do SEO for a martial arts academy. And I'm cutting crosses out of chestnut. So again, I do a little bit of everything, and it's whatever I can do for the person I'm talking to. But I always stay within what's in my heart. If I don't think I can do it and be joyful about it and come across that way, I try not to do it, because I've always had on the bottom of my stationery for the last 30 years, Colossians 3:23, work hard and cheerfully at whatever you do, as though you're working for the Lord rather than working for people.
Absolutely, man. What is it, man? That is it, man. He got a lot in his house, man. Hey, Matt, question to you, man. What is in your house?
You mean like possession wise?
You stepped away for a minute. I'm sorry. So Elisha asked the lady, we're talking about how you can increase your income. Mm-hmm. She was able to increase her income in order to pay off her debts and live off the wealth. And so, all right, thank you so much for joining, Mr. Hillbilly. Appreciate it. The seat is open, by the way. Anybody else want to join? So one of the things that as a financial coach, I tell people is that you don't have an income problem, you have an idea problem. And so Elisha was able to give her an idea, which she was able to capitalize on or monetize, and then she was able to pay off her debts and live in wealth. And so the house is not necessarily just in your house. It can be, right? Because I know I was in debt for a while. I used to just sell everything. I sold CDs, sold books, just get rid of everything. I just sold stuff. Yeah. But every day you got to sell some stuff. But also the house could be your physical house, your head, that you have some ideas that you can bring into this world that's going to serve other people. So the question was for you, what is in your house? What are some skills, some abilities that you can bring to the marketplace to serve other people?
Well, I will say, as far as the point you're making on selling stuff in order to get out of debt, I've been there. I've been broke. I kind of am broke right now, but I luckily have a family that's supporting me financially. Like I've had to sell. I had an electric guitar that I loved, and there's a point in my life where I said, if I don't sell this, I can't eat, and I had to. I hated it. I hated it. I did not want to sell it, but
Matt, you didn't want to eat the guitar?
I couldn't eat the guitar, no. But yeah, as far as like the spiritual side of the house, it's just kind of like helping people, living your life the way that you always have, and even if you're in pain and you see someone else in pain that's your friend or whatever, you got to use whatever resources you have to help them, even if you're hurting.
Absolutely, Matt. Rob, thanks so much for joining, man.
Good morning, gentlemen.
How are you, sir?
Oh, good. Bless.
So we're talking about what's in your house, how to increase your income, and we're going through the story of the lady with the widow with the oil, and how she came to a place where she cried out to God, cried out to Elisha, who was the man of God or the prophet of God, and he gave her some instruction. The instructions that he gave, he first asked, "What's in your house?" And so this question, this one question can change your finances forever. What's in your house? So this house could be your physical house. What's in your house? Maybe you're good at baking. Maybe you're good at whatever. I don't know. Or it's your spiritual house or your membrane. What's in your house up here? The ideas that you have that can bring value to the marketplace and serve more people. This is how you get rich. This lady went from being in debt to being rich, from being in debt to being in wealth, all because of an idea that she was given from the man of God. We got a lot to talk about here, but Rob, what's in your house?
You know, I would say encouragement, man. You know, in Proverbs it says, and I'm going to take it out of context a little bit, but a man's gift or a woman's gift will make room for him, right?
Yeah.
And bring them before important people. So that's why things like this are important. And me personally, it's encouragement. I'm a problem solver specifically. And so that could be manifested in several ways. I have an acumen in technology, finance, you know, and a couple of other areas. But it's at the end of the day, it's kind of like what Mr. Patrick is always talking about. It's about solving problems, man, and really trying to help people out of their situations. Lastly, that's why it's important in churches without walls, wherever they are, it's very important because people just go to places, vegetate, and they never understand or learn what's in them, the gift that they have. You feel what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Therefore, when stuff happens, because we know it's going to happen because the word of God tells us, you know, that's when people's hearts fail them of fear because they don't know what they have in them. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So those things are very important. So I answered the question and added too. So
that's cool, man. So as you think about, guys, anybody's watching, what's in your house, man? This is how you can really tap into some unlimited income. Each and every one of you have some talents, some abilities, some gifts, some things that you're good at. You're a 10 in some area. Now you gotta figure out what that area is, and you need to bring it to the marketplace. Now, here's the interesting thing. Again, we want to point this out, that the oil was already in her house. He didn't bring the oil with him. The oil was already there. He just came and allowed her to see the oil in a different light. And so what we're doing today, hopefully we're lighting a fire in your life that you can see your own gifts and abilities in a different light. You never looked at it that way. You didn't know that people value this thing that you could do, this service that you could bring. For you, it's easy because it's your gift. But for other people, they're waiting to pay you something that you can actually sell because it's not their gift. And what I want to say to you guys is that we need each and every one of you operating from your position of power. Each and every one of you have a gift, a skill or ability that other people either don't want to learn or don't want to do. And they will gladly pay you to do it because guess what? You do it with ease and you do it with excellence. So let me ask you this again, and this is for everybody that's watching. What is it that you do with ease and with excellence that you might be overlooking? This oil that's already in your house. That's why I'm the finance preacher, baby. Pat, go ahead.
Well, and when we look at that, you can say, well, you know, I try to do everything myself. And it's like, well, that's not true. We never try to do everything ourselves. How many of us in today's society raise our own food? We don't. How many in today's society do their own dentistry? I hope you don't. Okay. The reality is, you know, we do pay other people to do things for us always. We always do. I mean, there's people who grow food. There's people who package food. There's people that store it and keep it refrigerated. We walk down to the grocery store and we pick it off the shelf. It's already prepackaged. I mean, how many people have dealt with that before we touched it in the packaging and the prepping and the prepare, you know, and storing and shipping and it. Now we have access to so many things in our society because we pay other people. And we have to accept that fact that you are going to pay other people, and other people will pay you.
So I want to make a comment real quick, because we got someone that made a comment that I'm not running for wealth nor power, church without walls. Indeed, I'm focused on what God has promised, eternal life. Don't get it twisted. Just because we're talking about money does not mean that we're not focusing on what God has for us. The Bible has a lot to say about money. So why can't we have money conversations as people that believe in God or whatever the case may be? So don't get it twisted. Just because we're talking about this principle that came from a scripture in the Bible, and we're breaking it down a lot of different ways, we still are having church. We still are having spiritual conversation. And matter of fact, Jesus himself will use a lot of wealth or money. What is it? Not Proverbs. He would use a lot of money. Parables. He would use a lot of money parables to explain spiritual things. So don't get it twisted. Just because we're talking about money, just because we're talking about real life things that you may deal with, because a lot of the things that happen in real life, everything that happens in real life has spiritual principles behind them. So please understand that just because this is Church Without Walls, just because we're talking about how you can increase your income, just because we're talking about what's in your house, don't think that we're not having a spiritual conversation, because we really are. But hopefully you have the ears to hear and the eyes to see what God is doing in this place right now. That's why this is called Church Without Walls. All right. I just need to clarify that real quick. Matt, what's going on, brother?
Hey.
You got anything to add?
Oh, no, you're making some good points. Definitely. Yeah. I mean, money is essential to survival in our society. So it's definitely relevant to the discussion of God and anything else, really. Faith and everything.
Fantastic. Go ahead.
And we're in 2 Kings 4, and then verse 7 specifically says that she was told to go sell the oil, pay your debts, and you and your sons can live on the rest. In other words, not only were she's given a way to get out of the immediate circumstance, she was also given a way to go further, to go continue. I
think what's important about that passage is what he said specifically. The exact wording is, I'm trying to remember exactly what it was. It was go and live on the live on the rest. And he did not say to her, the widow, you will be rich. And she did not expect to be rich. She simply wanted safety for her family and survival. And despite whether or not she gets rich, what matters is her sons are not going to be slaves. That's what mattered to her. And despite what happens after the fact, the prophet said, live on the rest. Live on what means God gives you, and you will be happy.
And I would piggyback on that, Matt, and say living off the rest, living on the means that God has given you, and being out of debt, that is a place of wealth. We may not look at it that way and say that you're rich or you're wealthy because maybe you are living off of $500 a year or whatever the case may be. But when you don't have any debts, when you don't owe anybody anything,
you're rich.
That is a freedom right there. And no matter how much you make, so she was actually, I would say she was in a place of wealth. She didn't owe anything anymore, and she had income that she can live off of. She can live off the rest. Not only just income for her and her children, where she can live off the rest. Now it's a matter of her being a good steward of managing those resources to continue to maintain the wealth that she now has found herself in. So I would add that to what you're saying, Matt, and I totally agree that the way that we may look at rich now, she may not be, but I would say she's in wealth because she's out of debt and she has income that she's able to manage to take care of her and her family. To me, that's a great place to be. That's freedom. Robert, go ahead.
Yeah, and I just want to add to, the brother on the side running for Zion. I too used to be in that place, and this is what I mean. If you look at how the world is constructed, and I'm just learning this, the whole narrative is really the root of it is fear. It's based out of fear. That's where racism comes from. Church folks talking about money. It's really underneath the lines is fear. So that's one point I want to make. God has not given me a spirit of fear, but one of power, love, and a sound mind. And as you alluded to earlier, Mr. Pat, most of us haven't studied to show ourselves approved, read the book, and ask the Lord via the Spirit to give the understanding, because that's where it comes from. So said all that to say this: money is very important, because you can't serve God and mammon, right? So a lot of people don't like to talk about it, but it's a great teaching point because it resonates with everybody. And it's okay to talk about, because like Zion says, this is not my home, brother. I'm a sojourner here, but while I'm here in this system, it's an integral part of what's happening. And it has a lot of people under bondage as a result of not knowing how to deal with it. Okay. Lastly, I would say this: just because, and I used to be like this, well, I don't live flashy and all this kind of stuff. You want to associate a certain righteousness to yourself. But as you guys alluded to earlier, the righteousness is not in us. It's because of who we associate or who we humble ourselves to and are led by. That's my understanding. So with that being said, the true test is this, and I think you said it earlier, Pat. You know, when you go to prison, you know, everybody cannot eat pork and all this other kind of stuff because it's not available to you, right? The question is, if you get $1 million, what are you going to do? Lastly, most of us really don't understand our biggest enemy is ourselves, right? And it's easy to say I'm here and I'm there and I don't do this and I don't do that. The reason is because you don't have the ability to do it, right? So it's better to be humble, to be able to listen, not let certain things throw you off when it talks about money or things of that nature. But like you said, Evan, let the Spirit teach, lead, and guide as far as what the message is. And back to Kings is very important, because the man of God was a representation of God himself, right? And that's where all your faith and trust needs to lie in, because he's the supplier of all your needs.
Absolutely. Pat, you got anything to add?
No.
I'm sorry, Pat. I'm long-winded, man. I'm sorry.
So here's the deal, guys. We started today by going through the Beatitudes, the Sermon on the Mount. That was Matthew chapter 5, verses 3 through 10. And this is just talking about the attitudes of the Spirit that you want to kind of walk in, being poor in spirit, being humble, being meek. It talks about the meek shall inherit the earth, all these different things. So read that and see if you're walking in this place. Are you a peacemaker? Are you a peacemaker? Are you trying to find peace, or are you always the person that go into a situation and cause strife? Hey, that's not being blessed. Blessed are the peacemakers. So it's important to understand. Now, this was Jesus talking as well on the Sermon on the Mount. And then we're going through 2 Kings chapter 1 through 7. And this is a lady who was crying out to God because she was knee deep in debt and her children were about to be taken. And we mentioned that not today your children won't be taken as slaves, but today you could be passing on your debts to your children and making them financial slaves. So understand that there's a lot of dynamics that even 2,000 years ago, the principles still apply today. Are you leaving your kids bills or benefits? Are you crying out if you see yourself knee deep in debt, or you see yourself knee deep in a situation that you need to get out of? As Matt said, there's a difference between just praying and actually crying out for help. When's the last time you cried out for help? Got help, went and talked to someone that could actually assist. I don't do eggs. I'm sorry. I don't do eggs. You must speak or say something to us to know that you're not a troll. We don't do eggs around here. Anyway, when's the last time that you actually cried out for help? You may be in a situation right now. It may not even be financial. Okay, come on in, Halliburton. Let's see what's going on. I'm gonna give you a chance. You might not be in a situation right now that is financial, but are you in a situation that you need to cry out for help?
Hello.
Hey, Adrian, how are you?
Good, thank you.
Good, thanks so much for joining. Did you want to add to the conversation?
Yeah. I would just allow you to finish.
Allow me to finish? Okay. All right, so here's the deal. Let me go ahead. All right, so here's the deal. So we in 2 Kings chapter 4, verse 1 through 7, she cried out for help. Elisha called a response, and he asked her, what's in your house? And so we asked you, what's in your house? What do you have, not only just in your physical house, but in your physical house? In your physical house, the ideas that you have that you could bring a value product, service, or something to the marketplace where you could go and sell it and you can start to get out of your house. Now, sell it doesn't necessarily mean that you have to be in debt. You could be looking to improve or to increase your income by using the skills and abilities, the gifts that God is giving you. And now we would say now you could monetize it. But you're not monetizing just for your sake. You're actually just providing a service that's going to help other people. And ultimately, what you get in return actually happens to be the monetization. Are you willing to follow directions? Right. So the woman asked for help. The man gave her some instructions. She didn't ask why. She went and did. Are you the type of person that's going to respond immediately to directions that come from someone that you believe in? Maybe it's your mentor. Maybe it's your coach. Maybe it's somebody that you are job shadowing. I don't know who it is for your life, but are you willing to respond immediately? She responded without asking why. She went and did. And then she came back and said, I finished that. What's next? I want you to be a I finished that. What's next person. Everybody in the comments below put I finished that. What's next? In the comments below, put I finished that. What's next? This is the response that we typically get from children. They say, I'm finished, mommy. I'm finished, daddy. What's next? I finished my chores. Can I go out to play? I finished my homework. Can I get on? I finished. What's next?
I think also someone mentioned Matthew 5. I think there's a good line from it's Matthew 5:8. Blessed are the pure in heart, for they will see God. And I think that ties into this whole Elijah thing as well, where she didn't necessarily even know that. We don't know that she knew that was a man of God, but she saw him as a man of God, despite his status or who he was, because she was pure of heart.
Yeah, and he was pure of heart. That kind of tells us there's a connection. When you have purity in your heart, you have a heart of gold, you're able to discern and connect with people, just like we're doing right now. Right now, you could be asking yourself, okay, am I pure heart? I'm connecting with people all over the world on this platform. Some kind of way you found us, we found you, and we're having this conversation. Matt, this is your first time on Blab. You say, hey, I was just looking for something of substance. You found this title, you jumped in, and now you're in the seat having this conversation. There is something to be said about having, hey, how are you, Oxtenax? Oh, hello. You feel free to jump into a seat. You connected with something that brought you here. Now you're in the seat having this conversation. There's that heart connection that you're talking about. Yeah,
definitely. Yeah, I was yearning for a conversation, man, because I've been sitting, judge me, but I've been sitting on house arrest for days, and I can't talk to anyone, So I came on here. I was looking for something, and I'm glad I found this place.
Fantastic. Pat, you got anything to add to that?
Well, yeah. So, I mean, part of this started with the cry for help. And when you're, like you said, either inspired or desperate, inspiration or desperation sometimes moves us. So when you're in that emotional state to where you're willing to accept help, and then it says the pure of heart will actually see God. So if you've already absorbed enough and learned some, that way when you can judge and see the truth. So you have the need, you ask, you follow the instructions, you can discern it yourself because you have absorbed enough information to make that decision. You make the decision, you follow through, you do what you've been led to do. And then you go back and say, I've done that. Now, what's the next step? You're yearning to learn. You're yearning to correct. You're yearning for better. And Robert wrote in, the need, you ask, you follow the instructions, you discern, you follow through. Now, what's next?
Man, I'm telling you guys, you know what? Every week we have a phrase of the week, man. Anybody can jump in the seat. This is open. This is Church Without Walls. We don't, other than trolls, we open it up to anybody. So if you have something you want to add, you want to jump into a seat, you want your voice. I say this: everyone has a voice. Why not let your voice be heard? Feel free if you want to jump into a seat. Well, it may not be you, but anybody. It doesn't matter. Anybody that wants to jump in, you don't have to. It's just open. So if you want to, you can. Well, man, y'all lost my train of thought. Oh, we always have a phrase of the week, Pat, that fuels us. And I think that is it. Like, I'm finished. What's next? So as you think about your week this week, as you think about maybe the task that you have, you've been given some instruction on what you need to get done this week. I want that to be your phrase. I finished that. What's next? I finished that. What's next? I finished that. What's next? And you might not be speaking to someone in general. You're actually talking to God. God, I just finished my top priority of today. What's next? You get your week started this way. You get today. You write out your list of the things that you need to get done. That God is telling you need to get done. Not that you think you need to get done. Let me rephrase that. That God, that your spiritual father, the person that you look up to, you're saying, what needs to get done today? Write that thing down. Then every time you wake up or you get going in your day, you get your little checklist. You say, God, I finished that. What's next? I'm telling you, you're going to have the most productive week that you've had in quite a while if you just do that. You're going to take your life. Last year, I said it this way. Last year was the year that I took massive action and I had explosive growth. The reason why is because I lived out this philosophy. I finished that. What's next? If you live this way, you're going to find exponential growth, uncommon wealth come into your life because you're an I'm finished person, not an I'm talking about person. Let me repeat that again. You have become an I'm finished person, not an I'm talking about person. Woo! Woo! All right, Matt, you got anything to add? Ooh, I'm on fire over here. Y'all see that?
I guess a question for you. How often do you guys do these conversations?
Church Without Walls, same time every Sunday. But I have a whole bunch of conversations. So if you ever want to join in, I do a show Monday through Friday, 7 a.m. Eastern time. It's called Wealthy, Healthy, Happy People. So if you're looking for some motivational, you want to get around people that are serious about growing, you can join that. That's probably, I would say for you, that would be a great show for you to come on. We're looking for more people like yourself that are serious about taking their life to the next level. So feel free to join that community. We're here Monday through Friday, 7 a.m. Eastern time, 30 minutes a day to get your day started with people that are serious about growth and success. Did that answer your question, Matt?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. All right, so here's the deal, guys. This is Church Without Walls. We've been talking about what's in your house, how to increase your income, actually how to get out of debt. We just went through a story about a lady who was in serious debt, and she was able to get out of it by following the instructions that were given to her by the man of God. And she was a person that said, I'm finished. What's next? And he continued to give her instructions. She continued to follow, and she had oil that could flow for days. And the oil was already in her house. Hey, so Matt, here's the deal, man. We're about to wrap up our show today, man. You got any last words for the peeps? Any last words for the peeps that's going to help them get through their week this week?
I'm finished. What's next?
I'm finished. Well, that's what I like to hear. That's right, brother Pat. You got any last words for the peeps?
I finished that. What's next?
That's right. I am finished. What's next? Well, hey, guys, this is Church Without Walls. Thank you so much for tuning in, man. And hopefully, hey, if you guys want to stay connected to us, we are back again tomorrow, Monday through Friday, 7 a.m. That's our Wealthy, Healthy, Happy show. But this is what we do. But Church Without Walls is here next Sunday at 8 a.m. Eastern. That's when we get started. So if you want to come to a place where you connect with people and have open conversation about what the word says, and typically we talk about what the word says about money, but we might have to get into politics. Who knows? We start talking about slaves and stuff this week. Pretty interesting. But we'll be back again next Sunday at 8 a.m. Feel free to follow everybody, connect with us, and we hope to see you again soon. Have a wonderful week.
I guess.